everyone, and welcome back. I am the Pompkin King, and in today's episode we're going to be continuing our playthrough of Pure Imagination, Pure Coney Island. In the previous episode, we got started building some of the boardwalk for the Dreamland part of this section of the park, and we got ourselves set up with a pretty decent sized lagoon. Now, it's time to add the showpiece of that lagoon, the Shoot the Chutes ride. The Shoot the Chutes ride was the very first attraction that was built on Coney Island in terms of a theme park ride. It was originally built back in 1879 and was originally designed for the Sea Lion Park on Coney Island. Sea Lion Park was eventually bought by Steeplechase Park, and of course later in 1904 the Dreamland Park did everything that the other parks were doing, only bigger, better. So they had a Shoot the Chutes ride as well, and it was higher, faster, more exciting than any of the others, the ones at Steeplechase Park or Luna Park. And here we are recreating not the exact layout for the ride because, well, frankly, you can't in this game. The original layout, you would have had to have them climb up a tower and then ride down the chutes, and then they get attached to a rope and pulled back up again. Well, we're going to be doing it with a flume roller coaster, so we had a couple of drops and a little bit of dips, just enough to get back to the station, but it has the same kind of feel and it is the same height. Here I'm just building the loading station here. I'm trying to figure out how I want to do these little Victorian kind of embellishments, and building in this style is always challenging in this game just because of all the little fiddly details. One of the things that really identifies Victorian architecture is that it is got elaboration all over the place. So having the actual station set up is tricky from the perspective of getting the correct details without being able to scale them. Here I'm putting in the bridge over the lagoon. This is got 4 pillars, and you'll see later that I experiment with putting lions on top of it. If you look at photos of the actual bridge, it does have these sorts of embellishments. Here again, we run into kind of a roadblock with this system because in order to make the bridge, of course, I have to use the paths, but it doesn't really match the exact feel of the bridge. And the big thing for this episode, the keyword for this episode is going to be arches. Arches are really hard to replicate in Planet Coaster simply because it's designed to be a grid-based game. So making something that goes off-grid, that's tricky. And you'll see more of that as we travel throughout the park today. Here I'm just putting in some custom rails so that we can get that concrete look. You may also notice a distinct lack of guests in the park these days, and the reason for that is quite simple. The piece count has gotten to the point now where even my really good computer struggles to be able to load the park because there's so many pieces. So to try and economize on the number of assets that the computer needs to render, I've turned off guests. I've told them all to leave, so we have the park to ourselves. And so without the guests, without their balloons, we're running a little bit better for now. So these are the tricks that I'm trying to employ in order to keep the game going so that I can get all 6 of the nodes in this bronchial on the same map without having to subdivide them. Here, we're building a Coney Island staple. This is the original's Nathan's Hot Dogs. Hot dogs were actually thought to have been invented on Coney Island. They certainly invented the Coney dog, and every year on the 4th of July, they host a hot dog eating contest at Nathan's Hot Dogs. This particular one has been in continual service since 1916. So here I'm trying to improvise the little hot dog mascot that's iconic to Nathan's. Again, it's tricky because we're limited by the number of pieces that we have in the game and the ability to scale things. So I did the best I could. It's not one-to-one, but their representation at least is there. And I'm going through and I'm adding all these little details. I love recreating actual buildings that really exist because I can use photo reference from multiple angles and I can really get those details correct. Here I'm recreating another building. This is actually the Creation ride at Dreamland Park. Creation was a track ride that basically took you through the first couple of books of Genesis. It was, fairly tame stuff, but what was very risque at the time was that they had a 40-foot tall topless angel. And you would think that this would cause problems with the very uptight Victorians, but as it turns out, nudity is totally okay so long as it's connected to the Bible. Here I'm doing an attempt to try and sculpt the angel as best as possible. It's tricky, again, using these basic shapes to try and make complex curves and stuff like this, and I'm actually finding, especially after last episode when we made the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, that building simple shape sculptures is an interesting and, I have to say, pretty fun challenge. A knowledge of anatomy does help, but it does come out looking kind of lumpy, but it's sort of like kit bashing. You have to kind of find the pieces that fit and just kind of stick them in where you can. For example, I'm using a lot of simple shapes here, but I'm using just a square for the hand, have like a tube for the thumb. I can't differentiate fingers at this scale because they're just no pieces small enough to be able to do that, but at least I can have the hand representation. And I'm actually very happy with how this turns out overall. If you get to see the original statue, it doesn't look anything like this, really. Theirs is actually quite beautiful. But I'm happy with the representation that I'm able to achieve. Here we're going to build in some of those Victorian decorations I was telling you about. Like I said, in ornamentation, Victorian architecture cannot be beat. It's got stuff everywhere. They carved on just about every kind of surface during this period. It's very Baroque. And here I'm actually using some rocks to simulate the clouds that would have been over the top of the Creation ride. Now, I'm not actually doing the Creation ride. This is going to be a part of the gate into this particular node. It's going to be the backside of the Luna Park gate that we showed in the last episode. To that end, I'm just throwing on a quick building here. It doesn't have to be fancy since you're not going to be able to see it from any angle. And here we go. So here is the Dreamland Park gate from this side. We have our angel there, and of course you can see through to the other side. Now, moving from angels, we're going to devils next, because the next ride that we're building is the Hellgate attraction. As I mentioned in the last episode, the Hellgate attraction was what ultimately was the doom of Luna Park, or Dreamland Park rather, because it caught fire and it burned the whole park down. But this ride was another dark ride. It was a track ride where guests would ride a track down and around through the various layers of hell, see the devil himself, and so on. And this is a ride that I am going to be building, although we're not going to be able to see it in this episode. I freely admit I'm not the best at building rides. It takes a very long time, especially for a dark ride. The Phantom of the Opera dark ride took me a really long time to figure out how to build everything, and honestly, I just want to kind of move forward. So I'm going to be working on the Hellgate dark ride off camera, and then I'll show you the final product when it's done. So here I'm just kind of going through, and here you can see my method for making these sculptures using these simple shapes. I always like to lay out an armature first, sort of as an underlayer. And then if you keep them as a group, you can add the other pieces on top of that as a separate group, and that way you can keep them separate and you don't have to worry about accidentally selecting the wrong thing or whatever. The good news about this too is that because I'm using two different colors, it makes it really easy to see what's working and what's not. And then of course you can combine them all together into one group after you're done. There's our devil up on top of our building here. Pretty happy with how it turned out. I definitely think I'm getting better with the balloon sculptures. There's the Hell Gate in C2. And that is where we're going to wrap up for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, go ahead, hit that like button. And of course, you can subscribe for more Pure Imagination content in the future, or find us on Patreon. But until next time, I am the Pompkin King, and I will see you next time.